I first want to talk. There's a story that came out this week
Mm.
about Miles Brennan. I'm sure you know who that is. He was former quarterback at LSU. He took over for Joe Burrow in 2020 and then got hurt. And then Brian Kelly, fast forward a couple of years, came in as the new head coach from Notre Dame. And Miles Brennan, he brought competition with him. Kelly did. Miles Brennan has decided to step away from football. I don't think people really understand the severity of this and what student athletes, and again, I emphasize student athletes, go through on a daily basis, especially at some of the highest levels. You were there at the University of Alabama, but when you talk about football and you talk about basketball, there's shows about these teams, about these conferences, and they're constantly being splattered out there, all of their at times dirty laundry as well on
Mm.
national television, national radio, national podcasts. There's a lot of pressure that comes along with being a student athlete. And I'm wondering here, just from your perspective, if Miles Brennan and a bunch of student athletes like him get to a point where they just say, you know what, I think it's best if I just step away because the pressure is just too much.
Yeah, and I think it is unfortunate, and I think sometimes people view that as like a weakness, like, oh, he couldn't handle the pressure. But unfortunately, what our student athletes are going through right now is something that no one's ever gone through. It's
Mm-hmm.
not pressure any better athlete or better equipped athlete has handled before, and that's that social media has basically allowed small town gossip to be on a national stage.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone's ever been on any receiving end of a small town gossip or a high school drama or something, it doesn't feel good. It
Yeah.
has that bad feeling. It weighs on you. It lives in your head rent free. And then all of a sudden, when you multiply that
Mm-hmm.
times the national scale, the multiply it by the fact that anyone can look up any of your business on your phone, and then all of a sudden you tie your identity so closely to what you're so proud of. Like, yeah, I'm an athlete. Yeah, I get to do this, and you start to realize, like, well, hang on, this is not playing anymore. This is not about football. This is not about going to practice anymore. This has so many other things to it, and that's just not what I want to deal with. So it might not be a football pressure. It might just be a drama pressure or a story talking about you pressure that they don't want to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. That's again, it's the mental factor of being a student athlete isn't talked about enough. I mean, there's so many. It's a rigid schedule, and you're not only again an athlete, but you're a student athlete. But then on a weekly basis, if you're LSU or if you're Alabama or if you're a big time college football player, no disrespect to Division One, AA, two or three, because there are those pressures there as well. But you're also dealing now with the media on a weekly basis, having to talk to these reporters after games, whether it's a win or a loss.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I don't know if Saban allows it anymore, but there was for a really long period of time he didn't allow, I don't think, freshmen or
Hmm.
underclassmen to talk to the media. And I think that's where I had this conversation with someone the other day. It's not technology that is hurting us. I think media has become really toxic, and I think that's been a hard thing to juggle. But you wake up every day, you bust your butt, you work out in the weight room, you go to extra training. You might be a little hurt and going to the training room, but no one knows it. And then you have a bad practice that's been televised, or you have one bad play in a game, and then you're on full blast. And I do think Saban does such a good job protecting his athletes. I do think there are coaches out there that really try to say, hey, you guys don't know anything about what you're talking about right now. They work really hard. He has a 4.0 GPA. He's trying to go to law school, whatever it may be. Um, but yeah, it really, college has been moving this direction for a really long time. It really is that it's just professional sports. And sometimes you're on a bigger spotlight than certain professional sports when you're at the college level, especially when it comes to football and basketball. So you do have to kind of shake yourself and remember this is a 17-year-old kid. This is someone who was living in their parents' house last year. This is, these are not old grown men that are competing right now that we're witnessing.
You mentioned GPA in there, and one thing I like that the networks do. CBS is one of the networks that sticks out to me that does this on a weekly
Mm-hmm.
basis during the football season. ESPN, I'm sure, ABC, they do it too. They highlight a student's GPA and that student athlete and what they're doing in the classroom as well, just to kind of shed light on, hey, this is still, even though it's big money deals. I know that I think the Big Ten just sold their television rights to, I think it was Fox maybe, and somebody else, CBS, I think, for I don't know, $300 million. These guys are still, and gals, of course, student athletes who are trying to excel in the classroom.
Yeah, and I do appreciate them doing it because it kind of provides that human element to uh, to the fans and the athlete. I do think when a fan starts to perceive the person they're viewing on television or whatever further and further away from them, it makes it very, very easy for them to make a comment on an Instagram post or to send a message that's nasty. And, it doesn't, you don't feel connected to that person. You feel like you can't relate to that person. So that message doesn't hurt so bad when you send it. And maybe it's a compliment to the sport when, you do start getting the smaller sports that get fans that are like, oh, I could make that play. My grandma can make that play, whatever it may be. It's like, all right, they really think you're on that big of a stage, but at the same time, like everyone is a human being. Everyone is a student. Every single person. You cannot play yet. You can't play a sport until you have that 12 hours of eligibility, which means your butt's in a classroom for 12 hours. You're having to suffice, teacher requirements, and it is challenging on top of everything else that you are now required to do. And all of a sudden, your day starts to turn into well, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. And you start to lose sight of like, I'm a student athlete at a really cool college. I should be saying I get to do these things and I want to do these things, right? Not having a list of obligations throughout your day.
Here's the thing. I live in Tampa, right? And I don't live very far from where the Buccaneers play, Raymond James Stadium. And announcers, I hear it every Sunday during the football season. I hear it during the baseball season as well. We're trying to humanize. Bryce Harper last night, the Phillies broadcast was talking about his recovery from his injury, and he was taking batting practice. And they started to go off about Bryce Harper a little bit and just kind of, it's called character development, but it's really hard if you're a fan to relate to these guys. And for me, again, I'm driving by the stadium here in Tampa and I'm thinking, I can't believe Tom Brady plays there. I can't believe that Tom Brady, in a way, I can't believe that he drives these roads. It's very hard to relate to these guys, but it's easier to relate to college athletes because of all the extracurricular activities that they have going on with the GPA and trying to, the academic All-Americans, and you were one of them, of course, at one point. So yeah, I agree with you completely, 100% that these athletes, it's when they're being televised and the spotlight is on them, there's a chance to humanize them more. And sometimes that pressure really gets to them.
Yeah, no, it's always going to be a struggle. It's always going to be tough. And I do hope that like people can kind of place criticism and empathy. And like, I think fans feel this conflicting aspect where they're like, well, I want to be able to support my team, but that means I'm allowed to criticize them. And now they have a voice to do it too. So yeah, it is, I think what you're going to start to see at the NCAA level is the same type of support that professionals have, where it's like, hey, this is training on how to deal with media. Here's training on how to deal with social media. Here's training on how to deal with fans that you encounter when you're trying to be a normal student, right? Because that's the other thing. It's like, hey, they're missing out on so many things. Have them try to be a normal student from one time and go to a bonfire hosted on the quad. And then you get people being like, well, they should have been working harder. They should have been doing this, and this, prepping for the game, not staying up late. Like, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes with college athletics. But I hope it does start to turn back more to, it's like, they're kids. They're 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids.
A couple of weeks ago, we talked about NIL and the deals that these athletes are now getting, and how that might affect college athletics going forward. One thing here to know with Miles Brennan, and this was tweeted by Darren Rovell, who covers sports business. He tweeted, quote, in regards to Miles Brennan, he didn't play a single game since signing, but NIL deals can't be based on performance, so he keeps all the money. And some of his endorsement deals, Miles Brennan, came from Raising Cane's, Smoothie King, Gamecoin, among others. Smoothie King's the only one I know about. But I just wonder with these NIL deals, if we've now opened up Pandora's box here, if some athletes have that opportunity to get paid, and maybe now it's incentivizing not only to transfer to a bigger school or another school where you can get time to play, get the spotlight on you to where you can get these NIL deals, but maybe if you get this money, securing these deals, maybe you just walk away from the game altogether. I'm just wondering if that's the way it's progressing with these new NIL deals.
It is interesting. And you brought up a really interesting point. You're not allowed to be compensated for your performance. It's your name, right, your image, and your likeness. So, because someone brought up one time, they're like, this is not going to last. You're never going to be able to justify an All-American in football making millions of dollars and an All-American in softball, let's say, or even soccer or whatever, making $1,000. Like, the discrepancies can be too big, but it's not based on how well they played. It doesn't matter that they're an All-American. You could have a girl on the team who has a really big name in the community because of whatever it may be, and doesn't even play well and makes way more money than anyone else on the team because she might run her TikTok better than anyone else. Who knows? But
Yeah.
that is going to be what's really, really interesting is how that plays out, if there's any changes to it, how companies start to change their deals, because you are going to have people starting to walk away and companies are going to be like, oh, we didn't protect ourselves. How do we protect ourselves now?
Right.
So we will see. It is going to be interesting.
Yeah. I don't know, and there I looked, I tried to dig, and the information wasn't out there as to what money Miles Brennan will be making. But again, those deals for him are secure.